Welcome to WHEEL's webinar, Emerging Technologies for Social Good. Before the webinar begins at 10 a.m. Eastern Time and 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, please take the time to watch some information about WHEEL's background and some of its projects.
Good morning, good evening, good day. Thanks for taking the time to join us for this webinar. I am Suresh Shenoy, President of WHEEL's Global Foundation. For those who are not familiar with us, WHEEL started in 2006 and was incorporated in 2013 as a charitable organization by the alumni of the Indian Institutes of Technology, or PAN IIT Alumni Association. It stands for the 6 areas that pose the greatest challenge to humanity: water, healthcare, energy, education, rural livelihoods, and sustainability. Today we find ourselves completely aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals announced in 2019. Our mission is to offer technology-enabled solutions to the many NGOs to help scale their work. Where solutions do not exist, we encourage research and development at the IITs, the MITs, and other universities through sponsorships. We are a volunteer organization and depend on the generosity of our many donors and patrons who believe that scale can only be achieved by leveraging technology. Our tagline, "Technology-enabled philanthropy," says it.
A mobile motor controller helps the farmers start and stop the motors of their water pumps from their phones, without having to go to their farms at odd times, thereby reducing other associated risks like accidents and snakes and etc. We have seen droughts increase farmer suicides in areas like Marathwada in India and other places in the world. NASA has teamed up with the University of Nebraska to distribute maps showing the current and projected state of groundwater and soil moisture around the world. This is an area modern science needs to start analyzing any ancient methods that would help the world in taking care of droughts and forest fires. Solar farms are usually situated in arid regions with very limited water. Indian solar power plants are using Indian-made robots for waterless cleaning, while keeping the local youth employed to use these robots. This results in saving massive amounts of water in arid regions, generating more solar energy, and benefiting local communities. Also, the saved water can then be used by nearby villages instead. This new laterite-based indigenous water purification technology for drinking water is developed in IIT Kharagpur. It can absorb arsenic from water while keeping the essential minerals and alkalinity of the water intact. India is making its own cloud-controlled robots, or cobots, for thermographic temperature inspection, surveillance, UV disinfecting in place of chemical disinfecting, for use on farms, and for concierge services. The beauty of technologies like the Internet of Things, the cloud, data analytics, and artificial intelligence is that they help us control robots, drones, and other technology remotely, analyze data and optimize operations for worker safety, economics, and many other benefits. The Spoken Tutorials at IIT Bombay has a team which helps convert content into an e-learning platform and can also translate to multiple languages for increased knowledge dissemination. Augmented reality and virtual reality can revolutionize agriculture. AR systems can track the entire field in one dashboard and detect the presence of pests and insects. AR can also investigate the soil's properties so farmers can determine which crops would flourish on their land. Farmers can also facilitate the training of their staff without having to incur the additional costs of handling actual equipment and machinery. Air pollution kills more than 7 million people across the world every year. The majority of it comes from industrial pollution. India has the power to reduce its dependence on fossil fuels and coal by using its solar thermal technologies for process heat or hybrid thermal power plants. Some of these technologies are already being used for their higher reliability. Clean energy technologies can currently save 66% of economically underprivileged population. Here are a few examples of how SELCO is using solar technology for power. SELCO's founder Harish will be sharing some profound thoughts in his speech today. Across the world, 25% of agricultural produce is wasted. India processes only 2% of the food that it produces, whereas the US processes 70% of all the food it produces. Solar drying technology used in a distributed approach will help create mass manufacturers, which was a dream of Mahatma Gandhi. Solar drying technology has the power to transform the agriculture sector of India. Here is a picture. In the dairy sector, machines are going to be extremely important for heating milk using industrial solar, transporting milk, and analyzing milk. Farm robots are capable of being incredibly useful to farmers who are facing labor shortages. Farmers can use robots for sowing, weed detection and removal, surveillance, soil moisture monitoring, harvesting, and even carrying the farm's produce. Safety in mines is of paramount importance, especially in labor-intensive operations. From exploring flooded sites to providing alerts, the use of robotics aims to help miners work more safely and efficiently. Soil moisture monitoring, harvesting, and even carrying the farm's produce. Safety in mines is of paramount importance, especially in labor-intensive operations. From exploring flooded sites to providing alerts.
Good morning. Good morning, good evening, and good day to everybody. We welcome all our attendees from the different parts of the world to our webinar on emerging technologies for social good, a dialogue with Dr. Bharath Balasubramanian, Mr. Anup Wadhwa, Mr. Harish Hande. I am Pradeep Kapoor,
an alumnus of IIT Delhi. I've had the privilege of serving as India's ambassador in Cambodia, in Chile, and as a diplomat in various other continents after completing my exams in the Indian Foreign Service. I'm also the executive director of the Integrated Smart Village program mentioned earlier in the PowerPoint presentation. I work out of Washington, D.C. area, working with universities here and in India. We are proud that the Wheels Global Foundation was started in 2006, incorporated in 2013 by alumni of the IITs. Our mission is to offer technology solutions to scale efforts for water, healthcare, energy, education, rural livelihoods, and sustainability. Where solutions do not exist, we encourage research and development at the IITs and other similar institutions through sponsorship. We work collaboratively with partner organizations like the IEEE, ISV, CII, Mission Samriddhi, Sevak, Sarjan Foundation, Spoken Tutorials, and others. After implementing many projects in water, healthcare, sanitation, education, etc., we embarked on an integrated approach for smart village development, where entrepreneurship is at the core of making these projects sustainable. Our first such initiative is in Aravali district in Gujarat, where we are working on many projects that are jointly prioritized by students from IIT, the local panchayats, and this is being implemented along with partners like IEEE, ISV, and Mission Samriddhi. In the PowerPoint presentation, you may have seen the many projects and how you can get engaged to work with us. This PowerPoint will also run at the conclusion of the event. The aim is to give back the communities we come from and where we have come to work and live, in the United States or in India. IITs currently have over 100,000 alumni in USA representing the 23 IITs together. And the alumni have over 800 CXOs in the United States and are responsible for supporting over 1 million jobs. Several new technologies such as high definition TV, cellular phones, big data platforms, self-driving cars include the technologies developed by IIT alumni. The US Congress House Resolution 227 honors the contributions made by IIT alumni to the US economy. We are a volunteer organization and depend on the generosity of our many donors and patrons who believe that scale can only be achieved by leveraging technology. You can also get additional information at our website, www.wheelsglobal.org and www.wheelscharitable.org. There is also a donate button if you wish to contribute to our efforts. This webinar is made possible by a generous grant from Mrs. Smita Siddhanti and Ashok Siddhanti of Endina Inc., an environmental, health, and safety consulting company based in Washington, D.C. A quick disclaimer, all the views expressed by the speakers in this webinar are their own and do not reflect nor are endorsed by Wheels Global or the Wheels Charitable Foundations or its boards and its members. Now some quick housekeeping messages. All attendees are on mute through the webinar. You may ask questions to the speakers by entering it in the Q&A box. If you need any help or instructions, you can chat with one of us by raising your hand or typing your request in the chat box. We will attempt responses to unanswered questions by email. You may also send us a question by email to info@wheelsglobal.org. A recording of this event will also be available on our website and on YouTube and Facebook. And now it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce the moderators for this webinar, Yogesh Andle and Gitanjali Churi. Their very brief biographies are being projected, and I will not read them in detail. Mr. Yogesh Andle is a distinguished alumnus of IIT Delhi, an entrepreneur, and he serves on many boards, including the School of Inspired Leadership and Nuclear Software, and also serves as a director of Wheels Charitable Foundation. Gitanjali is an innovator and a CEO and founder of Energy Guru, a clean energy and robotics company, and the program director for Wheels Global Foundation. Over to you, Yogesh.
Thank you, Ambassador Kapoor. The topic of today's webinar is emerging technologies and social good. Before introducing this topic, I wish to share some memories from my childhood days in the early 60s. India was fighting hunger and had a huge shortfall of food grains. We were dependent upon the import of food grains from other countries, and especially PL 480. And then Green Revolution arrived in India. Dr. M.S. Swaminathan and Dr. Norman Borlaug developed high-yield varieties of wheat and encouraged farmers to cultivate these. New technology was seen in the form of higher yield varieties of seed, new methods of cultivation, improved farm equipment, tractors, pesticides, fertilizers, etc. The technology played an important role in helping India overcome its food grain shortage and fight hunger in the country. We became self-sufficient in food grain production and also began to share our knowledge, technology, and advancements in agricultural field with many other countries in similar situations such as ours. Some of these countries today are huge exporter of food grains such as rice, etc. Today, when we look back, some of us often ponder that did we make the best use of technology over a period of time in this agriculture sector? Their concern stems from health issues arising out of overuse of pesticides, soil becoming saline due to excessive irrigation, etc. World over, significant amount of agriculture sector uses chemicals as pesticides, weedicides, and or as preservatives. During past 70 years, we have seen a rapid development of technology all around in the field of agriculture, healthcare, education, space, telecommunication, IT, manufacturing, transport, energy, and whatnot. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, IoTs, connected devices, virtual and augmented reality, social media, big data, analytics, blockchain, you name it, precision agriculture, synthetic biology, they are all the emerging technologies of today. These high-end technologies glitter, they attract attention and are creating new unicorns and monopolies in capitalist economy. In social economy, we see emergence of other kind of technologies which have an impact on sustainable agriculture, sustained livelihood, better life, education, and healthcare, etc., for masses in resource-constrained environments. Some of these are also cross-applications of the emerging high-end technology. To discuss these emerging technologies for social good, we have a distinguished panel of speakers today with us. Mr. Harish Hande, a very well-known social entrepreneur and a Ramon Magsaysay Award winner. Dr. Bharath Balasubramanian, deeply engaged in development of autonomous and connected vehicles, and Mr. Anup Wadhwa, a humanist working on intersections of technology and society. So I would like to invite Mr. Harish Hande first, and it's my privilege to introduce Mr. Harish Hande to you. Mr. Harish Hande is a graduate from IIT Kanpur, and he did his master's and PhD from University of Massachusetts, US. He is co-founder of SELCO. SELCO's interventions have impacted more than 500,000 poor households across several Indian states by focusing on innovation and ecosystem building. Mr. Harish Hande was awarded Ramon Magsaysay Award in 2011. So, Mr. Harish, I invite you to share your views. You have about 10 minutes to share your views before we invite other speakers. And then we will have a little interaction towards after all the three speakers have shared their views. Over to Mr. Harish Hande.
Thank you. Thank you, Yoga Sab, and thank you to everybody for inviting me to speak today. So let me start with the basic that we're all going through this pandemic, and we have defined as stuff as essential and non-essential, right? And what's happening is health services are being factored as essential. And the other factor that's been allocated essential is when you have to buy food. And these are two things. Even the rest of them matter no. And we've been, all people who are listening to this webinar, who had the luxury of working from home, all the technologies that we have got is actually not making a difference because the world is still moving forward. The world is still moving forward for a lot of us in many ways. So that means whether many of the technologies that are innovated have been in fact in the non-essential category. And who are the two essential? When we look at grocery stores, but behind the grocery stores, somebody needs to supply the food. Can you imagine if all the farmers tomorrow in our country went working from home, India would again starve. And so that's why I want to focus saying that it's not a social good. When we mention social good, we bring in the concept of romanticism in technology for the so-called underserved people, and that is technology racism in many ways. Those are essential technologies. Those are not sexy enough to be put on your resume, and that's why we don't work on it, but those are essential. Let's earmark technologies as essential, semi-essential, needed, and non-essential. And most of the technologies that we all work on are in fact non-essential. How do we prioritize? And rather than blanketing them as social good, these are essential technologies that need to be worked on. For example, how do we look at what technologies can we make sure a blacksmith blower can work on in a manner that his or her livelihood would increase, leading to better tools for the smallholding farmers? How do you look at better and high efficient rice hullers in a manner that the rice thresher or the smallholding farmer can actually benefit in a manner that he or she can produce more, that leads to your grocery store having the food in time, even in this pandemic times, right? So my question is, we need to reshape our thinking process. It's not social good, it's not underserved. In fact, these are essential factors where technologies need to have been put money for. And I'm saying that 90% of the money that goes in is for technologies that the top 10% really want. It hardly goes into the payer need. And I'm addressing to my colleagues and everybody who's working from the IIT sector that we are in a center, and especially in a country like India, which could be the centerpiece of such technologies, of essential technologies that Kashmir needs or Tanzania needs, whether it is farm, non-farm. In the farm, it's every different supply chain or value chain, like silk weaving, cotton weaving, every part of the cotton weaving from picking to ginning has different technology interventions that need to happen. And that's where we need to work on. If you look at paddy, it has a whole supply chain of technologies that need to, it's just not IoTs. It's not information, because all those, in fact, are an add-ons. those are add-ons to what needs to be worked on in the first, and then they become an add-on to make it more efficient in terms of data. First, have we actually put in enough resources and money into different interventions of a sugarcane farming, for example? Or what does a blacksmith blower actually need? How has he been using the same sort of coal-based heating or heating mechanism for centuries, and not a single intervention have been done? Milking machine, for example. How do you enhance the productivity of small-holding people who only have 2 cows? What is the supply chain technology that needs to be done where small cold storage systems are innovated in a manner that helps the local person keep his or her milk for 2 more days so the pricing doesn't get affected? These are technologies. And silk weaving, if you go to local Manipur, for example, in rural Manipur, how do we work on technologies that are that the silk weaver of that Churachandpur district needs, and what modification needs to happen so his or her productivity actually goes forward? Today, there are 2 aspects. One is we look at technology from a very high level and also think that we are going to innovate the technology without asking the experts of what they actually need. Because for us, always expertise is defined in terms of the type of education that we get from, not from whether a silk weaver who's been doing that silk weaving for 45 years, can't he or she be a technology partner for us? No, that's because he does not have a degree. And that's the stupidity that we need to remove when we're looking at technology for essentials. How do we break those myths, and how do you break those thinking racism that we have in our perspective to make sure that if we have to look at essential technologies, which is what the top 60% of the population needs to happen, what are the infrastructure that needs to be? Today, what happens is we have created a hierarchy of the IITs, the RECs, and then the ITIs. The major innovation, sir, when you just spoke about the agricultural revolution, it actually happened because of ITIs and the rural Grameen banks. I think we need to balance it that the ITIs and the IITs are at the same level, where we complement each other's efforts to actually innovate on technology, because many of the students who unfortunately do not go into IITs because of financial reasons or so, not because they're not smart, it's because they are forced to go because of backgrounds and everything else. Unfortunately, they own the problem. And how do we pick up people who own the problem to be the solution providers? That, if you really have to use of innovations of technology in the essential space, we need to pick up people who own the problems, and not people who can design it somewhere, who have an emote romantic feeling that we need to solve it for the social good, and then say that this technology can be scaled up. That's never going to be sustainable. Unless and until technology has a social, you don't feel it, you're not going to come up with technology. It's not about an Excel sheet. I'm going to see X number of farmers are suffering from this, I'm going to sell it to them. No, that's not what actually true technology innovation means. Technology innovation means, do you have the heart? Do you actually understand the problem as if you were the person facing the problem? And then you truly innovate in a manner that becomes actually relevant to the society, then scale up will automatically happen. How do we? That is the technology racism that we have in our minds, we need to remove if we truly look at it. So as a country, we have enormous opportunities in the farm, and as I said, in the farm and non-farm sector. In the farm itself, you have the millet growing in central Madhya Pradesh, you have the rice growers in Assam, you have the cotton pickers of cotton in Upper Gulbarga. All these have different technology interventions. In the non-farm, you have what are the new technologies that the water pump, the motorcycle repair guys actually want? What does the kirana shops want? What does the local bakery, how does he look at high efficient bakery system in local areas? The barber shop, the technology that a barber shop guy in rural, say Mandya in Karnataka or Churachandpur in Manipur would actually read. So these are what is needed, whom assesses the needs. These are technology that we don't have a PID or a problem idea database at all. Or if you Google, many of the problems will never surface because the type of people inputting it are not the people who use Google in the first place. So how do we make sure that the problems are first documented, articulate by the people who actually understand the problem. Secondly, how do you put in people who will actually understand the problem, have the technology skills and expertise, while somebody who has expertise of utilization it, together become partners when none of them feel. Can you imagine if you send a PhD from Indian Institute of Science actually speaking to a rural farmer, the farmer will say, yes, sir, yes, sir. That's the problem we have. That we don't break the barriers of that sir and yes, sir system, and you create a problem of a hierarchy between a technology developer and an end user. And if that hierarchy it remains, you never truly have true innovations. I think to really look at innovations of technology that is needed for the bottom, financially bottom, not intellectual. Intellectually, they're all at the top 20%. Financially, at the top 60%. We need to rethink. IITs and other organizations have to rethink how do you break those barriers and breaking the thinking barriers, because India is in such a position that what we do in Odisha is applicable to Tanzania and Brazil. What we do in Maharashtra is applicable to Philippines, Indonesia, and Togo. We are an R&D of barriers, R&D of problems, R&D of solutions, and R&D of human resources that other countries can actually replicate. So we become a center of what you call it as a solution. And if I have to go to India, I need a visa to India because India will give me solutions. We become a superpower of solutions. I think we have a beautiful chance, can be done, convert it, make all the ITIs in our country as a centers of innovation.
So we are losing Harish Hande. Maybe he'll reconnect. There could be a technical hitch or a connection problem. We see his video is frozen. Harish talked about the technologies as essential, semi-essential, needed, and non-essential. And what he shared was that the essential technologies are the ones which provide us the daily necessities and the daily needs. I would like to move to Dr. Bharath because we've lost connection with I think Harish, and we will when he resumes we'll continue with him during question answer session. It's my privilege to introduce Dr. Bharath to you. Dr. Bharath Subramanian is a graduate from IIT Bombay and ME and PhD in automotive engineering from Technical University Karlsruhe, Germany. He is currently working as engineering professor at the University of Alabama and as executive director at Center of Advanced Vehicle Technologies at University of Alabama. He also heads cross-disciplinary research thrusts in electrical vehicles, connected and automated vehicles, and their associated infrastructure. Dr. Bharath worked for 38 years for Mercedes-Benz in Germany. He was promoted as the first non-German vice president at R&D in the history of Mercedes-Benz in 1997. He also restructured and headed Mercedes-Benz R&D operations outside Germany, including North America, India, and China. He founded the collaboration between Tesla and Daimler Benz and has remained friends with Elon Musk since 2007. So, Dr. Bharath Subramanian, over to you for sharing your views.
Yeah, thank you. It's been interesting that Pradeep has been able to pronounce my name correctly for the first time in 40 years. You know, typically when I'm in Germany or in the US, people cannot manage my surname. In Germany, they gave up very early, and I was called Professor Bharat. After coming to the United States, they even had a problem with my first name. So I'm called Dr. B here. So Americans like to keep it simple. Let me start sharing my screen with some PowerPoints that I've prepared. So I hope you guys can see it. Yogesh, is the PowerPoint coming up?
Yes, it's coming up. You can
I'll
go
go into
into
full screen.
the slide mode.
Okay,
Yes.
I'll go into full screen. Okay.
Yes, you can go into full.
Yeah.
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah, thank you. Now, just a few, two charts to myself. The failed IITian. You know, I was the only guy in my 73 batch who did not go to the US or did not go into a high management position in India. I followed my passion to go and work with Mercedes-Benz in Germany and to study in Germany. All my classmates and others thought I was crazy. I finished my higher studies at the same time working at Daimler and graduated with the highest GPA average in the history. And by the way, this is a nice joke. I had a better GPA than Carl Benz. Carl Benz also studied at Karlsruhe 100 years back, but he did the better innovations. Worked at Mercedes till 2012 and remained a hardcore engineer. Now, this is probably something why I say I'm a failed IIT. And IIT taught me a lot of stuff regarding differential equation, mathematics, physics, technical mechanics, software, etc. And I'm still doing it till today, 50 years down the line, doing the same sort of stuff. And even yesterday, I just finished a meeting where we are redesigning a diesel engine from indirect injection to common rail direct injection to improve fuel economy and emissions with 7 faculty. And I was reminded of my time in 1970, where at the IIT Bombay Library, I wrote a seminar paper on different diesel combustion technologies. Being a hardcore engineer, I didn't become an entrepreneur. And if you don't become an entrepreneur, you can't become a billionaire. But I worked with a few of them. I was asked to show 1 or 2 pictures of my past work and this shows 2 pictures of me up there, one in the corner office at the Mercedes Technology Center in Sindelfingen. You know, corner offices are highly in demand. There were 2 in the entire company in R&D. I had one and my colleague who was head of S-Class had the other. In 2006, I had to exchange this with my boss, who was the board member R&D. On the right side, you see a suite of automated driving sensors, which I'll be talking about. And below, you see some pictures of Elon Musk, Tony Fadell, and just 3 takeaways from these pictures. I very early in my life moved my company, the Daimler Group, towards electric cars. Became great friends with Elon Musk, and these were my regular visits twice a year to him in the Los Angeles or San Francisco area. There are 3 takeaways. Number 1, if you see the dress codes, I was a staid German, always wearing a suit. And these guys, these billionaires, they had shirts or T-shirts or something. If you see the middle picture, Tony Fadell, he's the inventor of the iPhone, the number 2 after Steve Jobs. And this was taken at our Mercedes R&D 10-year festival in Palo Alto. He was our chief guest, and what you can't see here is he came in slippers, chappals, toned jeans, and a shirt, and we were all dressed in suits. Later on, when I met Elon, I decided to remove my suit, put on my normal shirt, but by that time, he had moved on to a T-shirt. I don't want to go into speculation. If I had moved into a T-shirt, what Elon would be wearing today when I met him. The second point takeaway is the question of millionaires and billionaires. Whenever I had dinner with Elon, I always told him jokingly, and he accepted it, I'm just a poor millionaire and he's a billionaire, he needs to pick up the tab, which he willingly did. And when he came to Stuttgart, I got him over to Stuttgart for 2 days. That was the only time I paid for him. The last and most important takeaway from these pictures were, one is the father of the electric car and the other is the father of the smartphone and connectivity. And these are 2 main topics. And I go to my lecture, next slide, regarding the 4 major automotive trends. Now, transportation is the backbone to an efficient functioning of society, besides other elementary necessities like water, a roof over your head, electricity, food, etc. The four main trends: electrification of powertrain, connectivity and Internet of Things, safety and automated driving, and shared mobility services. Now, I'll be talking about number 3 and number 4. You'll have to believe me that I did a lot of work, and that's why I put in the picture of Tony Fadell and Elon Musk here on the first 2 topics. Now, going into safety of cars, there have been a tremendous number of innovations, primarily coming from the Mercedes-Benz group. In the first areas that you see, what I call reactive safety, topics like rigid passenger cell, which was developed by a brilliant single-finger engineer, Bella Bereni. In 1952, it was patented, and we gave away the patents. The 3-pointed seatbelt from Volvo Autoliv, and things like anti-lock braking systems, etc. These were all reactive systems. That means something had to happen, and then the system would kick in and mitigate or avoid that accident, or mitigate the accident. With the proactive systems, which started in 1998, with long-range radar, short-range radar, cameras, and now in the future also with laser scanners and LiDARs, they are proactive in that, like the human driver, they try to assess the situation and avoid accidents, mitigate the consequences of an accident, or keep driving safely. Now we are talking about social good. It's very interesting that at Daimler, we gave away all our patents very early, all our safety patents, for 3 reasons. One was certainly a certain amount of altruism, where we said we did not want to be faced with a world which said more people died or had accidents because we did not share the patents. Number 2 was more a business decision, where the supplier shared the upfront costs if we allowed him to supply the technology to other OEMs. And number 3, typically you had a cost regression when more people and automotive companies utilize the same technology, from which we also profited. And there are simple things here like the anti-lock braking systems. When we first offered it in 1978, it cost almost $2,000 a unit. Today, you all get it for about $150 with multiple functions. So there's also a business reasoning behind it besides the social good. On the trucking side, and this is just a quick chart, everything is 10 to 20 years down the line. But I bring it here because the trucking industry would probably embrace automated driving faster than what you would see for passenger cars. What is happening in this technology, there's a step-by-step move from reactive systems to proactive systems, especially on the safety side, like autonomous braking, collision evasion, etc. There's a step-by-step move to higher levels of automated driving. And once you come to level 3 or higher, there'll be a disruption in the entire transportation industry. Now, I was asked, and I'm just showing you the next chart, what are levels of automated driving? And this is a quick chart. Just read, it's generated by the Society of Automotive Engineers. Just look at the right side, which sort of tells you what these levels mean. 0, all on. Level 1, your feet are off the pedals, the brake and throttle. This is typically adaptive cruise control. Level 2, hands off. This is where most of the industry is today, including Tesla, Daimler, etc., where you still have to be in a position to take over, but the car will be self-driving itself. Level 3 is eyes off, and that's when the disruption starts, because once your eyes are off the road, you can do other things like streaming videos. That's all most people think about. But you can also work on your business needs on your laptop. If you're a trucking driver, you can do your invoices, the last mile planning, etc. Level 4 is brain off, where you can really sleep in the car and it'll do everything for you. And level 5 is body out. That's the robo car. So coming back, once again, if you look at automated driving and safety, we use the same sensors and actuators, the same identical software for object detection, classification, sensor fusion. However, we write slightly differing software for normal driving, automated driving, and emergency safety maneuvers. And the latter always takes precedence. And for us at the Mercedes and Daimler, somewhere in 2006, I convinced my colleagues, Mercedes always had a vision till today of accident-free driving. And I convinced all my colleagues that if you're talking about accident-free driving, you're also talking about a vision for fully automated driving. And there are two sides of the same coin. And let me show this to you in a video that I took on my own car. But before I go into it, the societal benefits of this technology. Extreme reduction of injuries, fatalities, traffic jams, lost job time. This is a National Highway Transportation Safety Association study of 2010. We just need to look at the last number, the last bullet point. The yearly cost that they had analyzed was $836 billion per year for the United States. Today, I think it would be about 50%, so probably about larger, about $1.2 trillion of lost costs. If you had level 5 automated driving with the sensors, you could probably reduce it by 90 to 95%. So tremendous impact on society with this technology. People will tell me, but we don't need automated driving. And I will tell you, it's the same, different side of the same coin. Either you can use the safety side or the automated side, but the safety side is always available. And let me show you a short film of me driving in my car on the highway at 70 miles per hour in level 2 automated driving, the highway in the United States. A short disclaimer, the speedometer shows 72. That's a parallax error. I'm driving 70 miles per hour. The vehicle can take all the curves, hands-free, but every 10 seconds, it tells me to put my hands back on the steering wheel. That's the gonging sound. So as to be sure that I am still in the driver's seat. Here comes a right turn, and it maintains perfectly the center of the lane through the camera sensors, through the radar sensors, etc. There is no traffic in front of me, so there's nothing I can maintain my 70 miles per hour. And here it tells me to put my hands on the wheels, and I don't, and then my car wanders, and ESP kicks in. My car goes over the solid line, the camera picks it up or wants to go over the solid line, the safety system kicks in and pushes me back and centers me on the lane. So the moment the car is endangered, the safety system kicks in. And even if I don't engage automated systems, the safety system will always kick in all the time. So tremendous potential for this technology for social good. The second area that I wanted to talk about is the area of shared mobility services. Now, this is a chart developed by the Car Report, and basically it shows on the x-axis the distance traveled, and on the y-axis the flexibility. In the extreme lower left corner, you're talking about walking and biking. In the extreme right corner, you're talking about personal car ownership, and you have various different models for it. The reason I bring in mobility as a service is that as more and more and higher levels of automated vehicles have become available, you would see a dramatic increase in shared mobility services. I put together a chart here which shows how many vehicles would you need. Today, we have a vehicle population in the entire world of about 950 million vehicles. My analysis, a very general analysis, says by 2040, 2045, you probably need only about 200 million vehicles. And you would have a shared mobility service with these vehicles where they would pick you up and drop you off. And the reason you need much fewer vehicles is the average use time of each of our personal vehicles is less than 5% per day. And with these vehicles, you could average 25 to 50% per day. There has massive consequences for OEMs, whether they would be downgraded to a contract manufacturer, and someone else will be offering the mobility as a service. For this reason, almost all OEMs are rebranding themselves as a mobility services provider. So the summary, the automated driving, connected vehicles, and car sharing together will disrupt the traditional economy. There will be extreme societal benefits of automated driving technologies. In the safety side, you can dramatically reduce accidents and fatalities. With the reactive safety systems from 2000 to 2010, all European countries reduced their fatalities by 50%. And my take is in another 20 years with these technologies, you can reduce it by 90 to 95%. And this will be especially beneficial for countries like India with mixed road users on our especially rural roads. These models, level 3 and 4, will usher in new business models. Level 5 automated driving will offer universally high levels of mobility for everyone and to remote locations, similar to the revolution that took place when we had cell phones, and every rural location in India also managed to get cell phones, where landlines were prohibitively expensive. The OEMs would need to reinvent themselves, otherwise they will become contract manufacturers. Thank you, Yogesh.
Thank you, Dr. Bharath. That was a very, very enlightening presentation. The impact of autonomous driving, the societal benefits arising out of it were absolutely mind-boggling. We probably never thought in those terms. So thank you for bringing them to our attention. Now I turn my attention towards Anup, Mr. Anup Wadhwa, a dear friend from IIT Delhi. Anup is a graduate from IIT Delhi, and he is currently serving as Director of Automation Industries Association. Anup is also the architect of AIA's Campus Connect and Skills Enhancement Initiative. Very passionate about promoting innovation and systems thinking amongst Indian small and medium enterprises. Anup is translating that vision via a not-for-profit technology initiative, the IITD, IIT Delhi, AIA Foundation for Smart Manufacturing. He has been a member of expert committee set up by Department of Heavy Industry in India to advise on the Indian roadmap for an Industry 4.0 national platform, bringing ecosystem partners from government, industry, R&D, and academia to foster Samarth Udyog. A regular volunteer with Tejgyan Foundation, Anup devotes significant time to nurturing and elevating natural values of peace, joy, and fulfillment. I invite Mr. Anup Wadhwa to share his views on how he sees the society and the technology connect taking place.
Thank you, Yogesh. I'm very fortunate that very two eminent speakers have already shared their views. While they kind of picked up different topics, one thing was very common and came out very clear was their passion and their purpose. Both indeed very, very strong. And I think the intention of Wheels to organize this also has a very strong passion and a very strong purpose. So good wishes to the organizers, and also a warm welcome to all the listeners on this webinar. I'd like to start with this as an opening slide because we are still in the midst of the pandemic, and all the technologists are rushing forth and saying, listen, I've got a COVID compliance system. Why don't you let me install this? But this slide is only one side of the coin. And what you don't see here is equally important. And that's the migration which has been caused because of the pandemic, the migration from the cities back to the village. That is what you don't see on this slide. And I would like to really, therefore, take this opportunity to say that is the age of mass industrialization going to get a big jerk? Is that going to get disrupted? Or more importantly, is the delight of mass industrialization on the wane? There are terms like Society 5.0, and there are different definitions. So I'd like to give my version of Society 5.0. Can we have the next slide? The term Society 5.0 also is a term coined, unfortunately, by technologists. So we had this Industry 4.0, and then somebody said, okay, let's go one step ahead and call it 5.0. So as an engineer, I cannot refute that. But another part of me says that if I look at India and I want to make a definition of my society, and if I'm allowed to speak a little bit using Hindi terms, I would say कि विकसित समाज के 5 पहलू हो सकते हैं. And in that Viksit Samaj, I would talk first about industry. So Samarth Udyog, that is the term we have suggested to the Indian government to create as a flagship for our own country and not copy what the Germans have done. The second, very, very important, which we have also recognized, is about the ecology. So Swachh Paryavaran. The third, which we are talking about, health, Swasth Manav. Now notice that in these Hindi definitions, you are not trying to correct anything. You are going to the root of excellence straight away. Then let's talk about education. Another very strong pillar of a Viksit Samaj. Shresht education or Shresht Shiksha. And we can also talk about what is the highest education one can get. And lastly, which gives a level playing field to everyone, is equality of justice or Saman Nyay. So these are going to be our vision. No, I'll stay with the previous slide. If these are going to be the vision of a developed society, call it whatever you may, call it 5.0, call it 10.0. 3 things come to my mind which is going to make this happen. So technology is definitely, there is no doubt that technology is going to march. And technology, I would say, is a very neutral set of tools. Applied the right way, it will produce the results you want. Applied not the right way, it will give you different results. So technology is nothing but a smart toolkit. And that toolkit, which is this time getting known as a revolution, is because for the first time, it is concurrently going to leverage the strengths and abilities of the human, of the physical machine, and of the cyber world. So this is what makes this period very, very unique, and that's why we call it a revolution. But it's only one part of the piece. The other part of the piece, and most important, is the human, the individual. And this is where we will also connect the value that the highest value which nature gives is harmony. Nature does not understand the meaning of 10% GDP per annum. That's a concoction of the mind. And if we have to have harmony, we need to have our own internal harmony. And that's where you'll need a set of leaders. And I call these leaders as CEOs, but with a slight difference. For me, the central qualification of a CEO is that his central eye should be open. तीसरी नेत्र खुली होनी चाहिए, because of which he will see everybody with equal dignity. And I think that's the point my previous speaker was alluding to, Harish, that we've got to stop thinking that we know it all or we are the ones who are going to give the solution. We have to trust our brothers and sisters in the rural hinterland or wherever they are, or for all that matter, all of humanity. We have to trust that their life needs to be celebrated the way they want to celebrate. And if we want to give them a helping hand, then we should be in service of them. So to be able to celebrate all of life, to be able to give dignity, you need those kind of individuals to come together. And I believe that at this point, as I'm speaking, we have over 100 such people coming together on this topic. And if we have to work together and we have to look at an ecosystem, and the tenets of ecosystem building, a little bit of my experience I'd like to share when we come to the next slide, is the connected process. So when you have a connected process, I could have anybody, as long as he's of the right talent and the right purpose, anybody can connect, as all of us 100 odd people are today connected. And what we will need to create a virtual entity or a virtual organization are some simple hand-holding processes. And I call them people-friendly processes, because now we are going to deal with an ecosystem where you need to have simplicity as your cornerstone. And of course, you would have exception handling rules. You would have visually supported, guidance. But these are going to be processes relevant for the purpose. So we have to have the ability to also be able to disrupt and reinvent wherever we go. In terms of talent, I completely agree that innovation is a quality which is not confined only to IITs, it's spread all over. And I call these people as nugget creators, innovation nugget creators. They will gain if they have a little bit of design thinking, all tuned towards affordable and sustainable solutions, because that's what's required. And of course, it also helps as we globalize, or even within India, if we want to ramp up and scale up, you need people who understand and appreciate the value of data and standards. I've already spoken about the collaboration piece for building virtual organizations. And now I come to a third part of ecosystem building, which really will marry the new technology toolkits I spoke about, marrying physical, cyber, and human abilities. It will make sense for us to have certain tryout hubs. They may be in the IITs, they could be outside, not one. India would need many, a few hundred such hubs, where all these technologies will be made available to play and help the innovators in confidence building, whether this thing works, whether it's reliable or not. So that is going to be the third piece, where we will have to figure out a way in which we can have the tryout hubs, because this is where you would need labs, you would need experts coming and visiting. And of course, from there, the regular suppliers, the regular entrepreneurs can take over. There are lots of technologies. I thought I'd read them one by one, but most of them have already been covered in the presentation. And if I get time, I would elaborate a little more on it. And the last comes to the role of the government or the policy or the framework. And in that framework, as I mentioned, we would need to also inculcate those essential elements of a Viksit Samaj, have them really up on our radar, and reinvigorate social entrepreneurship. A lot of entrepreneurship in the past has been towards commercial organization, making something for myself, leaving the legacy for my family or friends. But here now, because we are talking about individuals who are centered and who have the capacity to give unconditionally, social entrepreneurship, my forecast is, will be the next big thing happening. The objective of getting people to exchange their talent is also something which needs to be addressed, and the government can play a big role in policy making. There are lots of missions which are established, the Atal Innovation Mission. Every ministry has new and new schemes coming. But I think at the grassroots level, we need to create some internship programs where people exchange. I know I was getting a briefing from Geeta about the success she's had getting interns from South into Gujarat. So that's the kind of seeding, that's the kind of exchange we need to do. Get people from the rural areas once in a while to these tryout hubs, and also get the regular engineering graduates to go into the village. So creating an equivalent of the medical system where a doctor needs to spend time out in the rural area. So that's where the ecosystem comes. Now, if I have to pick a few applications for the future, I would like to focus on, maybe 3 levels. The first level is where basic living is involved. And I would like to talk about habitat, housing, availability of water and supply as the basic essentials. That's where technology needs to be applied, whether it's terms of building materials, whether in terms of integrated micro, multimodal energy systems, or it is anything to do with rapid deployment structures. All of that needs to be done because the starting point has to be in terms of giving dignity, that they must have a comfortable place to stay, irrespective of the vagaries of the weather. The second level is where you take out the fatigue of the person. And in that taking out the fatigue comes mechanization. And I quite agree with Harish that there are basic things in mechanization which we have still not addressed. Now I'm saying if we address it, and we address it with the right technology today, you would get probably the best going now. I mean, we could have done it incrementally, but we could now do it differently given the fact that we have lots of options available. So being able to take out the drudgery from work, you can go for mechanized plowing, mechanized seeding, mechanized harvesting, mechanized sorting, mechanized packing. And in fact, you must also now start looking at value addition through processing. And in terms of food, we need to recognize that the way the population is growing, and we are expected to have self-sufficiency on this planet, the per farmer accountability or responsibility has to increase. So if today we are talking about post the Green Revolution, about 150 families being fed by a farmer, that number has to go almost double, or at least to 250. So the third revolution has to happen in the agricultural area. And that's my firm view. Once you've done this basic, then we must move to giving them an aspired living. So that's the third and the esoteric level. And I think we alone are not entitled to have it for us in the cities. They are also entitled to have. So what is it they will require and how we will give it? That's where all these esoteric technologies will come into play, where IoTs, drones, robots, augmented reality, machine learning, agrobots, removal of weeds, unwanted weeds through electricide, the remote maintenance, and different kinds of education will need to be done. Basically, to summarize, I would say we need to give dignity to every person on our planet. Let them choose how they want it. We have a set of tool sets, we have a set of committed people, and we can make it happen as long as we work together and build up virtual organizations. One of the biggest challenges which will come in the way will be in terms of protecting our individual brands. But I think given the fact that the purpose and passion is strong enough, all that can be resolved. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anup, for bringing our attention towards the dignity of every person. We have a poll for all our viewers. So Gitanjali, can we? Yeah. So here comes a poll for everybody. Request all the attendees to give their opinion, give their what do they think about different questions. Let me read out these questions for you. What is a more conducive way for funding development of technologies for social good? Public funding with free access, private funding with intellectual property protection, or more collaboration in multilateral fora? And the second question is, what should government do to promote development and deployment of emerging technologies for social good? Should it set up more incubators, special benefits to universities and colleges, support entrepreneurs with incentives for scaling up? So, thank you. Thank you for participating in this polling exercise. What's the most conducive way for funding development of technologies for social good? The highest, the maximum number of our viewers have said there should be more collaboration in multilateral fora. And for the second question, second poll, so 45% in the first poll have talked about, have voted for more collaboration, about 19% for public funding with free access. And for the government, 44% have voted for supporting entrepreneurs for scale up and tax incentives on utilizing new technology, and 34% for setting up more incubators for developing technologies. I would like to invite all our panelists back on the panel and would like to ask Harish this question, that how can different agencies collaborate together to fund development of technologies for social good, the essential technologies that you mentioned? So who do you see which agencies could come together, and how should they come together and collaborate on this? Would you like to reflect on it, Harish? I'm sorry, Harish, you are on mute.
Okay, sorry.
Please unmute. Thank you. So you have again muted Harish. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Sorry.
can hear you.
Yes, sorry. I'll just take a minute to digress and then I come back to the answer, sir. See, the issue is today when people, anywhere, when they talk about migrants, right? Think about it. If I say the same thing of NRIs, and suppose Trump says something tomorrow, and all the NRIs who have been living here for 25 years have to go back to India. What type of jobs would you create for people who've been working in the real estate, who've been owning convenience stores, who've been owning pump stations to go back? Are you going to give them where they came from and you're going to give them the same training? 20 saal, 25 saal. What happens to the kids, right? Are you going to give them? See, the question is when it comes to migrants and physical labor, we've paintbrush and says sub migrants. He was a brilliant cook. He was an office man. He was different skill sets are going back to the villages, and we are paintbrushing the migrants as migrants, which is where the thinking issue. I have a problem when people. And second is to all the audience who's here. There are two proposals that you have in front of you. One, you get from me when I was 25-year-old, and you get it from a Manipuri kid, remote Manipur. And he sends you a proposal, whom will you fund? Moment you say, Harish Hande IIT, boss, usko fund kar deta hai. Iska kya qualification hai, usko chodo. Or nahi hai, Manipur mein likha hai, I can't even understand the proposal, because we normally are the judges of these beauty contests, right? The question is, until we break those barriers of funding, failure money, and truly, I go back to what did we actually learn the good parts of the agricultural revolution happened because of the ITIs, which actually, and the root cities, which created multiple people to be trained on how to run a water pump, how to sell a fertilizer, how to create the ecosystem that the farmers required. And parallelly, the rural banks, which were institutionalized or nationalized, they were said 40% of your financing has to be for end users, like the farmers, and 20% of your portfolio has to be the entrepreneurs who graduate from root set. So the whole ecosystem got created of that basis. When you already have such a large infrastructure that is there, why not we make sure that the MORD, the Ministry of Rural Development, the CSR, as well as the the Ministry of Finance get together and say we get a pool of what you call as high risk failure fund. Why should failure funds only be given to people who do PowerPoint, Excel, and Word? Why can't non-English speakers in our country get the failure fund that you and me give? And that failure fund, where we know 80% will fail, 20%, that will innovate, that will create innovations in the rural areas. Rural innovators will actually come up, right? Create back guarantee mechanisms in financial institutions so that if you are financing future innovators, your interest rates is 6 to 7%. And as he or she gradually increases the business, it'll go to, so it's a mix between finance, technology, and the background that is needed. That will, in fact, the vocational schools, and with complementary efforts from institutes like the vocational. It's not the MITs who create the innovations in the US. It's not the German Institute of Technology that actually did. Every other car engineering was succeeded because vocational schools succeeded. I think we go get back to the roots that we learned from the agricultural revolution.
Thank you, Harish. Professor Dr. Bharath, while the speakers were sharing their viewpoint, I quickly Googled the cost of accidents, the road accidents in India. I saw various estimates varying from 3% to 5% of the total GDP. In fact, there was one observation that from 2014 to 2038, if India could halve the death and injury on the road, there would be almost a 7% increase in the GDP of India. So we see that the road safety has a huge impact on the overall productivity. So how would you reflect on the conditions of the road in India, which typically are pothole driven? And even if we build all kind of safety mechanisms in our vehicles, how can we reduce the road accidents, fatalities, improve road safety with that kind of a infrastructure that's available there? And I'm sure This is a situation in almost every developing country. Dr. Bharath.
Yeah, Yogesh, I strongly believe there's a dramatic improvement to be expected in fatalities and accident avoidance with these technologies. And as I said, you don't basically need to go into automated driving. You can remain on the safety side of these systems, and they function regardless of whether you have a pothole on the road or you don't, or you're driving at 20 miles per hour or 70 miles per hour. Most importantly, my experience in India, rural roads, you have multiple road users using it. You know, bullock carts, pedestrian traffic, slow moving traffic, bicyclists, as also cars and trucks, many of them poorly lit. Now, one of the technologies that we have here is called active and passive infrared. The active and passive infrared can highlight and detect objects far beyond what the human eye can detect. And this is something fantastic. They can detect objects 150 meters away, where you as a human being cannot see it at night. And after detecting these objects, they can make you slow down or bring in a collision avoidance measure, etc. So you can have dramatic improvements. And people often tell me, you know, all these technologies are for these premium luxury cars. It's not for our normal car. And let me be very frank on that. That is total BS. In 1978, when we got ABS systems, they were very expensive. Today, you even have it in a Tata Nano. If you look at the rigid passenger cell concept that Bella Bereni developed, today you have it in even the cheapest car, every single car in the world. So these innovations, they trickle down over the years and they benefit everyone. And my absolute conviction is in about 20 to 30 years, even the poorest entry level vehicle will have some form of radar systems for collision avoidance, camera systems for object detection. And this really doesn't matter if he's using automated driving, and this really doesn't matter what is your condition of the road.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bharath. Thank you for that's a wonderful insight, because if the safety, as many reports indicated, if the safety on the road in India could be improved, it leads to tremendous upside in terms of societal benefits. Whether we are moving production of farms to cities or to other locations, or we are moving industrial goods from place A to place B, there's a whole lot of wastage that's taking place on the road just because of the safety issues. Thank you, Dr. Bharath. Given that we have almost reached, we have 15 minutes left for our webinar today, I would like to invite my co-host Geetanjali Churi to bring up some of the questions that she is curating from our viewers. Geetanjali, would you like to come on and ask some of the questions that our viewers are asking us, or asking our panelists today?
Sure. So before that, I would thank you, Yogesh. Before that, I would like to run a poll, and I think you're able to see this. I would like to ask a question. What are the barriers to the technology? So if you know, the audience can answer that, that will be great. All right, so here you go. Now, the results are that the affordability, the trust in technology, and the skills are the top reasons why there are barriers to adoption. So I'm going to ask a question to each of you. What can we do about it? So let me begin with Bharat. Bharat, it's wonderful to see you, and I'm really glad, Yogesh and the whole Wheels team, that we are able to bring the top-notch technicians or the technologists in the world, and the most known, the social entrepreneurs that we have seen in our current history. So I think it's wonderful because these are the two things that we're bringing together. Now, as far as the barrier to technology is concerned, coming back to Bharat, we saw that solar technology at once may have been utilized in by the elite, and now we are, we have got amazing uses of solar technology that Harish is able to, make use of it to bring the society up. So similarly, I see that a lot can be done with the autonomous vehicles. What are the efforts that are going on in terms of bringing the the chip technology or any other sensor technology, where we can start using these technologies for maybe the weed removal of the from the farms or something like that? What can we do? So can you please share a couple of minutes in terms of what's going on? How can we bring down the cost?
There are two parts to this question. One is how does technology cascade? And my experience has been, typically the technologies, the upfront R&D costs are very high, and the technology is so expensive that we, even in Mercedes, we could only afford it initially in the S-Class or the E-Class. And over a period of 5 to 10 years, it cascaded down to even the cheapest A and B classes, etc. This goes hand in hand with making the technology available for other applications. And it's very interesting to see one of the key technologies that you would be using in safety and automated driving is laser scanner technology. Now, laser scanner technology did not come from the automotive companies. It came from companies like Velodyne, who are utilizing it for scanning the ground. And from that, car companies and Google picked it up to utilize it for automated driving and safety. So there is one aspect of this. The moment bigger volumes come up, the technology progresses extremely fast, and there's a tremendous price degradation. So my feeling is there's a sort of automatic mechanism that once big companies manage large scales and volumes, technology becomes cheaper. But the big companies are not the innovators for the applications that you're talking about. The innovators are, as you say, the IITs, ITIs, etc., at the rural area, especially in India, which would pick up these technologies, which would become much more affordable and utilize it in areas where we would never have thought about it.
Sure, definitely. So, Anup, I think on the similar lines, I have a question. So the trust in technology is something that, the audience talked about. Now, can you share your viewpoints? We talk about smart manufacturing, but at the same time, the Gandhiji's mission was to bring the mass manufacturing. Now, what are the things that we can do to improve the trust in technology so that it gets adopted in a widespread way? And how can we actually get away from just the economic aspects of choosing the technologies, but also look into the social aspect of it? Because I have seen when people choose the robots, they're always thinking that, oh, it's going to take the jobs away, but that's not true, because the cobots are there to help the society. So would you mind talking about maybe the safety aspect as well as the the adoption aspect of technology?
Yeah, so Geetanjali, I think this poll is throwing up some data, but in that data, I also see some hidden answers. If we are saying that affordability and trust in technology are the barriers, it is clearly pointing to the fact that either the technology we are wanting them to adopt wasn't designed from an affordability standpoint, or that the way it was presented, it was said it was a robot. We could have said it is an assistant to you. It would have got better acceptance. Now, the way we are trying to deal with this in our project is to have have several layers of offering. And we also realized, I mean, we also do a classical survey, we get exactly the same results and it hits us. So it was looking like my poll done, about 6 months back. The way we are trying to do it is we are trying to take the next level of technology on a very innocuous looking lathe machine. All of us, 20, 30 years back in college, we all did some job work on that lathe machine. I'm trying to create the next level of smartness around it. Then we are taking some existing CNC machine, creating the next level of smartness around it. Then we're taking something like a press, then we're taking something like a 3D printer, then we're taking something like a welding robot. So we are taking different genres and showing a progressive migration. When you give a progressive migration, it's like you create a choice for another human being. And that's where I think something will settle. He will either take option A or B or C. He's not going to reject because he was only given one option. So that, to my mind, is one way in which we can create that offering. And as you said, somebody may get enamored by the energy saving. Somebody may get enamored by the labor reductions. Somebody may get enamored by the safety aspect, or somebody may get enamored by value addition. So different people are at different points of their life looking to what is their next level of aspiration. And if we design and give offer in line with aspiration, it'll work very well. Otherwise, what does a very high-end technology, what it does is, even for me, it would induce some fear. A fear, will I be able to maintain it? Will I get adequate return? Will my EMI get, justified? So it's, I would say, also a human and an emotional sort of alignment you got to create whenever you make a value proposition. So I would really go for creating multiple choice solutions.
Sure, so definitely. Now coming back to Harish, you have seen how solar is being implemented and how you have definitely very creatively utilized it on the ground. Now, I would like to ask a question in terms of, were there any challenges that you faced in terms of adoption? Was there any fear? That's number one question. Second thing is, you said it absolutely right. The intellectual, abundance is all over India. It's like Kasturi Brug is what we call, and it's not just in the IITs, but the rest of the population who does not speak English is superbly intelligent. So, what are your suggestions in terms of improving their confidence to take risks, and how can we bring the solutions from there? Because again, we are talking about the high tech stuff pushing, but I would love to hear from you.
So, two parts I'll ask again. One is, my answer related to the survey results. See, Gitanjali, that's an unfair survey. I tell you why. Because if all these groups were asked a question, how do you think that the blacks, African-American blacks would actually behave after this? We will decide, and then we will decide on behalf of them what it should be, right? Without asking a single African-American person what that survey is, because he or she is the end user, right? If I had asked the same question to the end users, none of them actually, many of them would not have said affordability. They would have said, I can afford the system, provided you gave me 5-year finance. See, the question is, with technology, what happens is the end product at the grassroots level or anybody's house is a combination of financial product and technology product. Like if you told me Mercedes, yes, it's very expensive, but you give me a 30-year finance where I have to pay 100 rupees a month, it's very affordable to me. It's how do we innovate on financial innovations, right? Mm-hmm. So purely telling affordability, that's exactly in 1995, when solar was 210 rupees per watt peak panels. At that time, poor people who were earning less than 10 rupees a day were able to buy solar because of financing. So we always said it's affordable for the poor and expensive for the rich. The question was, it's the affordability needs to be redefined. What does affordability mean? If there was no finance, none of us would be able to buy houses. And regarding, I have a question about time span. I would not agree on the trickle-down effect at all, because trickle-down effect is okay for an iPhone where lives are not dependent. Trickle-down at anything where lives are not dependent. If clean water, if not dependent, you are in 5 years, if we take our time, that means you have a person who is in the 8th grade is now on the 12th, you have lost a generation. people dying, decent, not. So we do not have the tensions that we are losing a generation every day. I think for me, why didn't it happen yesterday? I'm not going to wait for trickle down at all. Absolutely not. If more money has to be pumped in, because I need healthy citizens, educated citizens today, why should I deprive a 10-year-old girl there in Dharwad just because my 10-year-old girl can have it access today? Why can't she have an access today? That unfair way of thinking that until we scale up and do, so it all depends on us. We need to remove the concept of intellectual colonization. And that is a critical factor if we need to look at the urgency of what's happening today. Otherwise, we'll keep talking of trickle down. We keep talking of they'll help us, keep talking of scale up. I'm sorry, I don't have the time. We don't have the time to serve. And it's a matter of time that we need to serve. And that actually can be done if we put all our mind resources and that practical. Google would not have succeeded if internet was not subsidized. Somebody else subsidized the internet, which Google has made it. We need to subsidize the ecosystem that needs to happen so that people get water yesterday, not 10 years down the line. I think we have all failed who've graduated from IT. It's not a failed engineer here. We have all failed that we're not able to get a single technology up and say, yes, we've done it for rural India. And I think we need to change our thinking process and say, how can we actually do that?
So on one, I think the other half of the question was, how do we increase the confidence of the population that is there to actually
population is as long as you get, see why the confidence of the population is not there, because they don't believe that you're part of them. They believe you're different. You're coming like you and they, right? Unless that's exactly why we need to inbuild the innovations and technology among them. It's not about sending volunteers there. It's high time they send volunteers here. My question is, as all of us here sitting here, we will give an advice to 1,000 farmers who are experts of doing sugarcane for 40 years because we have the expertise of Excel sheet and PhD. They will know. Until we change that, where we start looking at decentralizing the monies that needs for rural innovation to happen by the community that actually has the problem, it's not us. We are purely all middlemen. And we are taking away the hard cost R&D monies of us, and trust issues only when they do. Can you imagine if two people from California went to Nandan and Narayan Murthy and said, I'm not going to teach you new methodologies of software. They'll say, who the heck are you? It's the same way the farmers feel, but they're not able to say because of our hierarchy of socialism.
Sure, definitely. Thank you so much. That's wonderful to hear that. I think we're almost over in terms of the time. Yogesh, would you mind conclude? Please go ahead. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gitanjali, and thank you so much, Harish, Dr. Bharath, and Anup. This has been a wonderful seminar, an awesome seminar. We had so many takeaways from this. So the key takeaways that I take from you, Dr. Bharath, is that it has sort of blown away my misconceptions about the autonomous automated vehicle driving. I used to think that it's probably for high-end vehicles, for big vehicles, but I fully agree with what you said, that if these could help improve safety on the road, that is also a tremendous social good. Harish, what you brought about, that when we are developing technology, and we are developing technology for someone in the rural community, unless we engage with him or he engages with us very deeply, the kind of technology we will develop will only be elitist. Fully agree, fully by that point. All of us fully, I'm sure all our viewers will also agree with you. Some of the takeaways that have been picked up by our colleagues and friends in the team have been displayed for you on the slide here. I will not read them out, given that we have almost crossed our time. So thank you very much for this enlightening webinar today. I hand over to Ambassador Kapoor for concluding the session.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to the speakers, Harish, Anup, and Bharat. I can't tell you how much of appreciation there is even on the chat box. And they want to listen to all of you again. Your remarks have been excellent and very insightful. Thanks to Yogesh and Gitanjali for acting as the moderators. I also wish to thank the entire team of volunteers and collaborators who have worked very hard to make this happen. It is clear that in the post-COVID world, in countries like India, USA, and others, as we march towards becoming more self-reliant economies, we will require innovation and entrepreneurship that is tailored to economic realities and also is, very tailored to social good, particularly for the rural areas. All the development accelerators, that is the government, educational institutions, NGOs, industry, have to work closely with each other so that it is not about capital invested or human resources or technology, but it is based on outcomes. And it is not measuring return on investment, but measuring social good and social impact. I'm sure this will also help tremendously in rural empowerment and making the rural areas as agencies and agents of wealth creation and wealth distribution, like Harish mentioned in some of his concluding remarks. As Mahatma Gandhi mentioned about the scenario, he said that if you recall the face of the poorest and the weakest man you have seen, and ask yourself if the step you contemplate to take is going to be of any use to him. So if we keep that as our guiding maxim, I'm sure that we will be able to do some good to the world and to society. For all the attendees, I thank you again. A link to today's event and recording will be emailed to everyone and will also be on our website, www.wheelsglobal.org and www.wheelscharitable.org, where there is also a donate button. Once again, Wheels is a volunteer organization, depends on the generosity of our many donors and patrons, believe that scale can only be achieved by leveraging technology and working collaboratively. Our tagline, technology-enabled philanthropy says it all. If you have missed the video that was running prior to the start of the event, it will be running again after the webinar is over. It will also include the key takeaways from today's proceedings, as also those from the past events. Finally, thanks again to all the attendees, and we hope you will be able to join us again for the next webinar in 2 weeks. Very interesting news for everybody. Our next speaker is going to be His Highness the Maharaja of Mysore, Yaduvira Chamaraja Wadhwa. The family has done great pioneering work in India for the last 100, 200 years or more, many hundreds of years actually. And he will be in a conversation with Rajat Gupta, Chairman of Wheels. We also welcome all the attendees. The joint event we are hosting jointly, along with NIIT USA, July 23rd, with some very eminent speakers, including Raghuram Rajan, former RBI Governor, Arundhati Bhattacharya, former Chairman, SBI, and Deepak Jain, former Kellogg's Dean of Business. Thank you very much once again. Back to you, Gitanjali, to run the PowerPoint. Thank you, everybody.
A mobile motor controller helps the farmers start and stop the motors of their water pumps from their phones, without having to go to their farms at odd times, thereby reducing other associated risks like accidents and snakes and etc. We have seen droughts increase farmer suicides in areas like Marathwada in India and other places in the world. NASA has teamed up with the University of Nebraska to distribute maps showing the current and projected state of groundwater and soil moisture around the world. This is an area modern science needs to start analyzing any ancient methods that would help the world in taking care of droughts and forest fires. Solar farms are usually situated in arid regions with very limited water. Indian solar power plants are using Indian-made robots for waterless cleaning while keeping the local youth employed to use these robots. This results in saving massive amounts of water in arid regions, generating more solar energy and benefiting local communities. Also, the saved water can then be used by nearby villages instead. This new laterite-based indigenous water purification technology for drinking water is developed in IIT Kharagpur. It can absorb arsenic from water while keeping the essential minerals and alkalinity of the water intact. India is making its own cloud-controlled robots, or cobots, for thermographic temperature inspection, surveillance, UV disinfecting in place of chemical disinfecting, for use on farms, and for concierge services. The beauty of technologies like the Internet of Things, the cloud, data analytics, and artificial intelligence is that they help us control robots, drones, and other technology remotely, analyze data, and optimize operations for worker safety, economics, and many other benefits. The Spoken Tutorials at IIT Bombay has a team which helps convert content into an e-learning platform and can also translate to multiple languages for increased knowledge dissemination. Augmented reality and virtual reality can revolutionize agriculture. AR systems can track the entire field in one dashboard and detect the presence of pests and insects. AR can also investigate the soil's properties so farmers can determine which crops would flourish on their land. Farmers can also facilitate the training of their staff without having to incur the additional costs of handling actual equipment and machinery. Air pollution kills more than 7 million people across the world every year. The majority of it comes from industrial pollution. India has the power to reduce its dependence on fossil fuels and coal by using its solar thermal technologies for process heat or hybrid thermal power plants. Some of these technologies are already being used for their higher reliability. Clean energy technologies can currently save 66% of economically underprivileged population. Here are a few examples of how SELCO is using solar technology for power. SELCO's founder, Harish, will be sharing some profound thoughts in his speech today. Across the world, 25% of agricultural produce is wasted. India processes only 2% of the food that it produces, whereas the US processes 70% of all the food it produces. Solar drying technology used in a distributed approach will help create mass manufacturers, which was a dream of Mahatma Gandhi. Solar drying technology has the power to transform the agriculture sector of India. Here is a picture of a solar and biogas-based food drying technology developed by Energy Guru. It is designed to help rural women dry herbs, fruits, and vegetables. Apart from concentrating solar rays, it also uses biogas, which is uniquely positioned to help achieve 9 of the SDGs. This technology keeps harmful methane from entering the environment, provides livelihood for rural women, saves food, provides clean cooking, and provides organic fertilizers to farms. In the dairy sector, machines are going to be extremely important for heating milk using industrial solar, transporting milk, and analyzing milk. The qualitative analysis of fat content and ratios of A1 and A2 protein will be important to humanity. Farm robots are capable of being incredibly useful to farmers who are facing labor shortages. Farmers can use robots for sowing, weed detection and removal, surveillance, soil moisture monitoring, harvesting, and even carrying the farm's produce. Safety in mines is of paramount importance, especially in labor-intensive operations. From exploring flooded sites to providing alerts, the use of robotics aims to help miners work more safely and efficiently.